Hello and welcome to our radio. I'm your host Sakhlain and today is 22nd October 2020. We have some important topics to talk about and discuss. Well, the Hindu newspaper gave a very fine article about the scenario of manual scavenging in the country. Here, the author talks about how this problem exists and the problems that are faced by the so called manual scavengers in the country. Firstly, we have to understand that the existence of the very problem is a very, very big shame for all of us because we are employing human beings to clear human excreta. Well, this problem is not just about a problem related to the society, this problem is also related to the social makeup or the caste that exists in the country today. The author says that even though there are several legislations that ban the existence of the same, the problem persists in the country. And the author says that even before the first act was passed in the year 1993 to abolish manual scavenging, the existence of this problem was very, very big in comparison to what it is in 2020. It was so big that there was a particular post called as a scavenger that was reserved, and there was wide existence of dry latrines across the country. But after the 1993 Act, the post was abolished and there was a move towards making sanitary latrines and to prohibit the idea of manual scavenging. But we saw that it was not very, very successful, and then arose the Safai Karamchari Andolan, which saw the wide participation of NGOs, civil society organizations, so on and so forth, that came together to fight against the problem of manual scavenging. They also reached the Supreme Court, and this became a pan India scenario. And due to the struggles and due to the work of these organizations or civil society organizations or NGOs, there passed the Prohibition Act, the Act of 2013, which was called as the Prohibition of Employment as Manual Scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act. But when you talk about the year 2013, that was just almost 7 years ago, what is this scenario today? Has the problem of manual scavenging drastically reduced? No, it's not drastically reduced, but yes, there is substantial amount of change that we have seen. But it's sad to also notice that the number of deaths due to manual scavenging and these manual scavengers entering potholes has increased in a significant manner. It's actually gone up. Now let us talk about the problems that these manual scavengers face. First is lack of safety. They don't have the safety equipments that they need to be equipped with, starting gloves, boots, glasses, or anything for that matter, even masks, because a sewage or a manhole is such a perilous place because it is filled with such toxic gases and such toxic elements that it is very, very harmful for the human health. And these people enter the potholes, enter the sewages without any kind of protection gear that they are entitled to wear. Now I would like to talk to you about this movie called as Coat. It's a Marathi film, and if you have a look at this movie, if you watch it, it's pretty slow, but it's very substanceful, and it has so much to talk about. Now that movie particularly speaks about manual scavengers as well. There is a scene where this woman says that my husband, who is a manual scavenger, is on a holiday today because there was no existence of insects in this pothole where he was supposed to go in. So what does this mean? That means that when a manual scavenger has to enter a pothole, this is a convention of the record, that when a scavenger has to enter a pothole, what he does first, that he drops a stone or something solid into that manhole, and when he drops it, he sees that there are insects or cockroaches or some kind of insect that come out of the manhole. And when he sees that these are coming out of the manhole, that is when he understands that it is possible for him to go out because there is existence of life inside that manhole. And if those insects don't come out of it, that means that manhole is very, very dangerous for him, and even he can lose his life. What a sad state of affair for us. This talks about the problems that they are facing here. They can lose their lives, there is no primary safety equipment, and there is no promised work also, which also is the relation of this example that I gave you. Though if there is no existence of life, there is basically no work for him. And if there is no work for him, there is no wage for him, or there is no livelihood for him. Right? Very simple. There's no promised work, there is no safety of work. And of course, they don't have any kind of labor unions or the kind of organizations that fight for them. There is no self-help group only in the most basic avenue. They only have NGOs and civil society organizations that fight for them. And of course, when you talk about work, they have no contracts, they have no agreements. Leave this alone. They don't even have life insurance, health insurance, or anything. Their recruitment is randomized, and they're not just used for manual scavenging work, they are used for several other things as well. They're used for cleaning the other kind of solid waste management activities, cleaning the sewers, not just manholes. And the author mentions about how during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown scenario, they were used to clean up the dead bodies, they were used to clean up the excreta that the COVID patients would generate, so on and so forth. Basically, the whole scenario for these manual scavengers is not great. And you can talk about the travel facility also. If a manual scavenger has to travel from his natural workplace to any other, let's say any other area, he has no facility. All he has to do is walk, or he has to take a public transport for which he's supposed to pay money, or apart from that, he can sit on a garbage truck and take the tour of that place. There is no facilities, absolutely no facilities. So basically, this problem is huge, and it needs a lot of attention by the government to make sure that this act that they have enacted, called as the Prohibition of Employment as Manual Scavengers, and their rehabilitation is not just living on paper but also can be taken forward in the right manner. Now, these topics or these points that I spoke to you about become important. In your answers, you can make use of them to talk about how there is acceptance of manual scavenging and how the people who are working as manual scavengers suffer because of these many issues. Let's talk about the next topic. Well, the next topic is completely different and it's completely away from what we speak about. It's about how the cost of natural rubber has been affected due to COVID-19. So what is this rubber? Rubber is a natural product, and talking from geographic point of view, rubber is an equatorial crop, but in certain circumstances it's also grown in tropical and subtropical areas. This rubber requires moist and humid climate. It requires a rainfall of over 200 centimeters and temperature about 25 degrees Celsius. This is from geographical point of view. From economic point of view or commercial point of view, we need to know that India is the 6th largest producer of natural rubber in the world. 6th largest producer of natural rubber in the world, and several regions in India like Kerala and Tamil Nadu account for 81% of the production because they are regional producers or traditional producers. There are other states that are non-traditional, non-regional. You can call them, these states are northeastern states like Tripura, Meghalaya, and there is also Odisha, Karnataka, Maharashtra that are non-regional. Now what we need to know is that a lot of people depend on the production of rubber for their livelihood and for their consumption. And now India is in a position where the demand for rubber has drastically increased, which wasn't the scenario previously. And now since it's increased and we don't have sufficient amount of production, we have to rely on imports, and we are importing natural rubber from regions like Malaysia, Indonesia and China, and 40% of our natural rubber is imported. And we have the Ministry of Commerce and Industry that takes care of this aspect, because it's the rubber board that deals with all these things, and the rubber board was established in 1947 itself. And after that we have the National Policy for Rubber or National Rubber Policy brought out by the Department of Commerce and the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in the year 2019 in the month of March. So this is the idea of rubber that we need to have, and it plays a very important role. It's used in a lot of things, starting from tires to stationery to domestic products, so on and so forth. There is one article which also caters to international relations from GS paper 2, and the whole article itself is not important because it does not speak entirely about India's relevance, but it talks about several things that we need to have an understanding of. Well, the first among this is the Abraham Accords that we have recently come across. What are these Abraham Accords? Abraham Accords are basically the kind of an agreement or a kind of recognition of the countries that another country has done. That is simply UAE and Bahrain have together recognized the existence of Israel, and USA has brokered this so-called deal, and this means that UAE, or the United Arab Emirates, or Dubai as we call it, is going to establish trade relations, politics and economic relations with Israel, and has recognized the country of Israel. Now, how does this matter for India? It does matter for India because India has to balance its diplomacy, has to take care of its diplomacy in the region, and has to make sure that it's not favoring too much towards the Sunni nations like Saudi Arabia, or it's not favoring too much the Shia nations like Iran. Because if you favor too much towards the Sunni nations, the Shia nations will get very, very angry and will take retaliatory steps. And if you focus too much on Shia nations, it's vice versa. Now, this Shia Sunni conflict has been a very predominant one, and India has been very, very smart in balancing its approach because it's great friends with Iran also, it's great friends with Saudi Arabia also. Apart from this, what we learn is the Doha Accord. What is this Doha Accord? Doha Accord was signed between USA and the Taliban as USA pulled out of Afghanistan. Now, this has an impact on India because through USA, India had substantial amount of influence in Afghanistan and could maintain. In general, also India individually has done a lot of things in Afghanistan, but due to the pulling out of USA, there can be several impacts for India as well. We have to note that India has to balance this out very well because India does not confront Taliban or talk to Taliban on a direct basis because Taliban is a terrorist organization, it's a terrorist outfit, and India does not believe so. But in the major thing that India needs to worry about here is Iran, because Iran is our only way to reach Afghanistan, and if India does not have the right kind of relations with Iran and it sees the growing influence of countries like China on Iran, it becomes very, very tough for India to reach Afghanistan, and we cannot afford to lose Afghanistan. Now, we should also note that Pakistan is playing significant influence with the help of China and with the help of China, which is taking the help of Russia to influence Afghanistan, and India has to play a very significant role and make sure this is not the scenario and it is being dealt with in the right manner. And that is why Doha Accords become very, very important, because Afghanistan is very, very important for us. Last but not the least, the author talks about the idea of the way how Golan Heights were captured. Now, where are these Golan Heights? This is a place called Golan Heights. It is located between Israel and Syria, and it's a disputed region that has been usurped by Israel in the 6-day war. That's not required, it's not very detailed for us, but we need to know that this region was taken away by Israel from Syria after the 6-day war, and this Golan Heights region is currently under the occupation of Israel, and this is a disputed region between Syria and Israel. Well, that's it from today's discussion. These are some important things that we had to be aware of, and we can make use of this in our mains and your prelims as well. That's it from today's R Radio. Hope you enjoyed this session. Write to us in the comment section about what more you want to know about. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.